What the fuck? All right, let's kick her off, Christian. Let's just talk about the elephant in the room right off the bat. So,
Yeah,
5
you just
seconds.
want to get it out of the way?
I mean, that's what people come here for. They come here for questionably the most important thing that could happen to our season. 5 seconds to go in the play. Jordan Love gets hurt. We'll just say hurt, goes down, gets hurt. What goes through your mind? What goes through my mind? I mean, what was it? Let me start here. What was it like waking up on Saturday morning? You know how you wake up after a game, like maybe it was a loss, which NFC playoffs, whatever, right? You wake up the next day and you're like, that really happened. Did you have that moment when you woke up on Saturday morning? Like, did that just
Mm,
happen?
I don't know if I felt that way. I was just scrolling through my phone trying to find any new information because we didn't know anything
No.
the night of. We didn't know anything all weekend, basically. I mean, we had little tidbits here and there that would come out, but I mean, it was stressful just not knowing.
Oh, it didn't help the fact that they had to take an entire plane ride back
Mhm.
from Brazil. Like their plane took off, I think, somewhere around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning our time, and they didn't land until afternoon, like noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Ugh.
So you don't have like the typical, oh, it can go get an MRI done right away and figure out what's going on with his leg. It was pins and needles. And you text me. I mean, there were a lot of X doctors, Facebook doctors, social media doctors out there. You text me. I'm not holding this against you by any means because you were right about your original score prediction. We'll get to that in a second. But I didn't even want to think that way. I did not. My mind didn't want to go there. Like
Yeah.
Matt LaFleur said in his press conference, I didn't. My mind didn't want to go there. I woke up
How
Saturday.
interesting was that press conference?
Oh, yeah, and
Matt looked
which one are you referring to? The one that he had like immediately
right
after the
after the
game?
game.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can keep going and get into that later, but yeah, it was I don't know. I don't know if I've ever seen him like that.
Well, I had a ton of Jello shots because there were 3 turnovers by the defense. There were touchdowns happening. Like it was
Yeah.
week 1. I was ready to hit it, and I woke up Saturday bright and early with a hangover, going, "Did that actually happen?" And it felt like we didn't know. Like if the season was over, I don't know if I personally, my body could have handled an entire year without competitive
Yeah.
Packers football. I wasn't ready to go there, but we got good news. We got
Yeah.
good news,
Yeah.
right?
I ultimately I think best news possible with what happened to him. I think it was the probably the best possible outcome.
And by the time everybody's listening to this, they're well aware that it's just a sprain. They're saying 3 to
Mhm.
4 weeks. Now, as far as LaFleur's press conference on Monday goes, what's happening there?
Yeah.
So Malik
Yeah.
Willis will start as long as Jordan Love is not cleared to play. Is- I'm thinking it's mind
Yeah.
games, personally.
That's I wrote this down too for that specific press conference.
Okay.
It's either hopefulness, there's some sort of hope that Jordan Love gets a second opinion and gets cleared to play, which is highly unlikely, or it's strategic, right? He doesn't want to say that they're starting the backup so that the other team, the Indianapolis Colts, can start to prepare for a backup quarterback. He wants them to think, "Oh, maybe there's a chance Jordan Love plays. We can't rule that out. We got to prepare for that."
Right.
And throws off their game. I think it's completely strategic, but yeah, it was the first. Obviously, that was the first question that the press threw out there, and for him to say that right away, yeah, the plan is if Jordan can't go, Malik will be the starter. Like everyone in the room had to be like, "Wait, what? What?
Exactly.
There's a chance he could play?" Like it must have been so confusing.
They rebutted it on the second question. They're like, "Wait a second.
Yeah.
Like, what's the level of severity you actually think he's going to get to play?" He's like, "Well, we're not going to put him out there if it's a risk to him or anything like that, like the normal coach speak." But I don't know. We
Yeah.
could wake up Sunday morning with some crazy text notification that Jordan Love will start. Highly
Yeah,
unlikely,
right.
but man,
No, yeah.
would that be something? I'm with
Well,
you. I think it is mind
the
games.
biggest news is that he's not going to IR. That's a
Yes.
huge deal. That's a huge deal because he goes to IR, then he's automatically out 4 games, I believe it is.
Yep.
So they're leaving it open to the possibility of him coming back sooner than that. So that's a big deal,
It's crazy we're having this conversation.
right?
We
Week
never,
1,
yeah, we did not think we would
yeah.
be here. We skipped the entire whole backup quarterback conversation last week because we're like, it doesn't matter. Well, it does
Yep.
matter, apparently. And week 2, it's going to matter to us. So Malik Willis will get the start if Jordan Love is not cleared to play. So where do we sit with this, right? The way I see it, if I'm getting, this is a podcast, opinions, all that stuff. I My gut's telling me that Love will be back at the earliest against Minnesota. That's the
Yeah.
final game of September. And the latest will be October 6th, which is I think that everything we're hearing, the words from LaFleur, which are mind games, it's 3 to 4 weeks, but it's leaning more towards sooner rather than later. I think a lot of this will depend on how well the Packers fare. If they can squeak out some wins and they head into that game against Minnesota, or maybe they're 2-1 or 1-2. I think maybe it's a roll of the dice. But I think ultimately Love's going to find himself probably out at least 2 weeks, and then we'll kind of see where we are. How do you think the Packers fare? Do we have a chance? Do you think that we're going to win any games? I feel pretty good about it. I'll dive into that in a second. What are your thoughts about it?
I mean, it's definitely a lot more of a toss-up game this week than it would have been with Jordan Love. I think the Packers lean on other guys. I think that the performance that the Colts put on this week during week 1 is a little bit of an outlier. They had some big chunk plays that made their stats look better than they really were. So I don't think this Colts team is as good as people might think after their week 1 performance. So yeah, I think with the talent that the Packers have, I think there's definitely still the opportunity to win this game and next week's game. It's just a matter of Malik Willis being able to manage the game. I think the ball's going to be in the hands of other guys a lot of the time, and he's just going to have to make sure that he doesn't make some major mistakes that lose the game.
That's pretty much it. I agree. And I think maybe, in order to look ahead to the next couple of weeks, we should maybe take a quick pause and look back at this game that we just played in Friday night and kind of dissect because it's going to be this team around Malik that's going to have to step up, carry the load in order for us to squeak out some wins. Malik is not good enough to carry this team like a Jordan Love and win these games on his own. Other players are going to have to step up around him. So I split up my week 1 recap. You probably saw it in the notes. Maybe you have your own good, bad, and ugly, but I split mine up into the good, bad, and ugly categories of week 1. And it starts with, on the good side, it starts with Jalen Reed. Outstanding game, outstanding performance. Crazy 12-man on the field offsides call. You don't usually see that
Yeah.
that in the NFL. But outside, I mean, if that play would have stood, this guy could have had, close to 180, 190 yards receiving. He finishes with 44 receptions, only four receptions, 138 yards and 1
Wow.
touchdown. That leads the NFL in week 1. He had 1 rush for 33 yards, which also led to a touchdown. And outside of him on the offensive side of the ball, I thought Javon Bullard looked pretty sound. He got 11 total tackles. And then Edgerrin Cooper came in, didn't play a whole lot of snaps, but when he was in there, I saw him flying around the field looking good. Those are my 2 players, both offensive and defense, that are the good outcomes of what came from Friday night, in my opinion. What do you think the Packers, who do you have for who looked good, what looked good of the Packers on Friday night?
Yeah, Jaden Reed is obviously the top positive for the Packers in week 1. I mean, he was incredible. He was unstoppable. But Pro Football Focus actually puts out they put out a week 1 team. So basically every position, which players throughout the entire NFL scored the highest as far as their PFF scoring system. Jaden Reed was the top wide receiver in the NFL this week. And then another Packer made that list as well. Tom, the right tackle.
Yeah.
He made the team of the week. So that's nice to see. Our offensive line is doing well, at least part of it. Yeah, so I don't have any other specific players that I noted as positives, but there were some other positives that I noticed. The offense moved the ball well, it seemed like, whether it was through the air or on the ground, they were able to move the ball on the Eagles, which the Eagles defense, we talked about it last week, how they've struggled with their pass defense. But in the last few years, through their struggles in the pass defense, their run defense has been very strong. So for Josh Jacobs and Wilson to be able to carve out some chunk plays and get the run game going at least a little bit was good to see. Also, the new kicker, Narvison,
Yeah.
looked good. I mean,
I'd put him
I
on the
didn't
good
have any
list.
complaints.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for him to not be with the team the entire training camp and then to come in right at the beginning of the regular season and perform right off the bat is good to see. Hopefully that continues, but that was something I noted as a positive. And I guess on the defensive side of the ball, it was good to see the defense making some plays. So we, like you mentioned, there were turnovers, players were flying around. Today I rewatched highlights of the game, and the highlights aren't every play, but on this highlight reel, the tackling seemed pretty decent. In years past, I've noticed that the Packers tackling has been suspect. A lot of bumping and shoulder tackles and not wrapping guys up. So the tackling looked better to me this year. But yeah, just making plays, the interception, the fumble recovery. And rewatching those highlights right at the end of the game there when the Eagles were down on the goal line, they were about to do that tush push and he fumbled the snap. If they could have scooped that fumble up right there at the end, that that changes the whole thing. Maybe one of not my favorite, but one of my favorite plays of the game. It wasn't even near the ball. It was away from the ball. Packers were on defense. Bullard just laid out AJ Brown.
Yeah.
And I saw that and I was like, and AJ Brown was coming to crack block him. And Bullard, a rookie, comes in and is like, nope, and lays him out. That was kind of fun to see. Gave me confidence in him as a player too.
I mean, there are headlines all over this game that just took place, and it's hard not to spend. I mean, it's tough. You could always just probably fill up a whole episode, which our schedules don't allow us to do that. Our families and stuff to recap an entire game, but you have to talk about the field conditions to an extent. I love what LaFleur said that it affects both teams, but that was a huge variable for what we saw. And we really don't know what we saw on Friday night because that field was so inconsistent. Jair had that interception in the end zone. Well, Brown slips in the end zone. Maybe on a healthy turf, that doesn't happen. There were multiple times Love dropped back to pass and was losing his footing, and his throws were just the timing wasn't there and the footing wasn't there. And it's so important. So we really, as great as maybe the defense did look, and I agree with you, at times they looked really great, and at other times, I'll get to my bad and ugly here shortly, they didn't. But there's just a lot of variables in that field, and learning, coming into a week 1 matchup where they didn't play a lot of preseason games and they were just relying on practice, not a lot of tackling drills that you can get, live tackling that you can get. You're kind of coming into that and learning that right off the first game. There's a lot to take away, and then there's some things that are still question marks. As far as the kicking side of things, I'm very pleased with Narvison. Would I have loved if he would have went 4 for 4? Absolutely. But 3 of 4 is sound. I think all 3 kicks that he made were beautiful. We almost started a new saying at my Packer parties where it's right down the middle as soon as he kicks it, because they were all right down the middle. They were beautiful. And then the one that he did miss ends up hitting the goalpost. So it wasn't a wide right or wide left kick. It had a chance. That's all you can really ask for out of your kicker. He was good on his extra point. So for his first game in the NFL, I thought our kicking was sound. Let's go to the bad. Let's go to the bad real quick. As far as that's concerned, my bad is red zone offense. Then there's an ugly that comes after this, mind you. So red zone offense was my bad. They went 1 for 4 in the red zone. The defense did force 2 turnovers to start the game. Interception off of Hurts by Xavier McKinney. That was fucking awesome. That's our new addition at safety, and he gets an interception. That was so cool. And then they force a fumble. They have both chances. pretty much in the red zone right off the bat, off of those turnovers, could not capitalize, had to settle for field goals. That's bad. And that's something that
Yeah.
we struggled with at times last season, primarily in the early part of the season. That's the difference when you really boil it down, when you can win the turnover battle like the Packers did, and you capitalize on those turnovers. That's a winning formula right there. We weren't able to succeed, so it became a much closer and ultimately a loss. They got to clean up the red zone. I'm sure they're kicking themselves. I know Matt was not happy with the results in the red zone. That's my bad segment as far as good, bad, and ugly. What do you got on that front?
Yeah, that was included in my bad portion of the segment here. The red zone offense was the killer. That was what lost us the game. I mean, you already said it, but you turn those field goals into touchdowns, it's either a win or a very different situation at the end of the game. So you already went through most of that. I also have noted Saquon Barkley could not be stopped.
Well, and that's my
was-
ugly, Christian.
That's what I have noted as my ugly too. Yeah, he was pretty stellar. He looked very good, and the Packers did not have an answer for it. Whether it was in the passing game or the running game, he was flying all over the place. 3 touchdowns. You gotta put a cap on that.
You have to, and we brought it up in previous episodes these last couple of weeks. One downfall that the Packers have consistently not been able to figure out is that stopping the run. We had to face it with Christian McCaffrey in the NFC divisional round last year. We have a test coming up next week with Jonathan Taylor and the Indianapolis Colts. The Packers have continually struggled with stopping the run, and LaFleur sounds more positive about this than maybe you and I might sound about this, but those gaps were big. Saquon had running lanes. He capitalized on those running lanes, and we could not. I mean, we looked a lot better than the Jets' run defense last night, but granted, it was not an improvement that we wanted to see. Maybe the field conditions have to do with that. Maybe the lack of playing time. Too early to sound the alarm, just like anything with a week 1 overreaction, which we'll definitely get to in overtime as far as week 1 overreactions. But yeah, I was hoping to see more from that run defense, and it just did not quite show up on Friday night.
Yeah, and I mean, this Eagles offense, their offensive line is one of the best in the league. So, I mean, we're not going to face that every single week. So I hope to, in future games, I hope to see the Packers defense stop the run better than they did this week, obviously, or last week. But yeah, that's something that they got to focus on this upcoming week as well.
You know, I had a coworker new to the area. He's a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. He's going to probably get a kick because he watches all these videos, but he came up to me on Monday morning and he goes, you kind of let me down. I didn't know anything about the Packers. I had all this hype about the Packers, and they went out there and lost. And I'm like, look, it was a close game. All right, it's week 1. There's some things that happened that we didn't anticipate. And they still are good, okay?
Think about the team that the Packers just lost to. The Eagles are definitely in playoffs. They're a playoff team.
A lot of
talent. And they're in talks about another Super Bowl. Yeah. So it's not like we played some scrub team. We played one of the top teams in the NFL.
Right.
So to lose, I mean, we were within a touchdown at the end of the game there. You know, there was some mistakes made, and, you know, if some of those, like we said, some of those field goals were touchdowns, it's a whole different game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they got crushed or anything like that. It was a tight game down to the wire. The loss doesn't give me doubts about the rest of the season. I still have confidence in this team.
You know, and it just kind of dawned on me because somehow this escaped all of my notes of things I want to talk about. Well, one thing I got hung up on more than anything watching the game live was whether or not they should have went for it on 4th down with 7 minutes to go in the game, and they opted for that field goal. Analytics tell you that you should go for it, but on the flip side of the coin, and everybody that I was watching the game with essentially was telling me to shut up. There's plenty of time left. Let the defense do what they're going to do. But the defense couldn't stop them for 7 minutes straight. I mean, there's an ugly category all on its own that the defense could not get that offense off the field when it mattered the most to try and get the ball back into Love's hands with more than 30, 40 seconds left on the clock. It's early. I don't think week 1 is going to be this, and it never is. This week 1 team will not be the week 7 team that we see in a couple months, but definitely disheartening to kind of go out, miss the opportunities. I think we beat ourselves, I think is what I'm getting at. And that's not just an optimistic Packers fan talking. That we had our opportunities across the board to win that game, and that just sucks that they couldn't put the nail in the coffin.
Yeah. Yeah. And we mentioned it at the beginning of the recording here, Matt LaFleur's press conference right after the game on Friday. I don't know that I've ever seen him like that. His demeanor, he looked pissed. And I couldn't decide if he was pissed about the things that he was actually talking about the sloppy play, about the missed opportunities in the red zone, them winning the turnover battle and not winning the game. Like, I mean, obviously those things are going to piss off a head coach, but I couldn't decide if he was just pissed off about that or if part of it was the Jordan Love injury right at the end of the game and him just frustrated and upset that potentially their season was going to look completely different and kind of be lost.
Yeah.
So it obviously a few days later, we're in a much better spot than where we all were feeling on Friday night. But yeah, that press conference was weird. I've never seen him like that. He was upset, and he did not want to be in that press conference.
Well, as far as if any of you are looking for an injury report, as of recording this, there has not been an injury report that's come out. This isn't just talking about Love. I think if anything, that would be a game time decision that we'll never get any indication on. Don't hold your breath on that one. We don't know anything about Lloyd, who obviously didn't get a chance to play. We don't know anything about the rest of the players that maybe are dealing with something. So I got no injury reports for this particular episode. Let's talk about the Colts. Colts come off of a close 29-27 loss to the Houston Texans. I thought you summed it up very well when you brought them up previously in this episode. I kind of categorized it more as mediocre play meets huge play, mediocre play with some huge plays sprinkled in. They had a 60-yard touchdown, big play right there, a 54-yard touchdown. They had a blocked punt that led to them getting the ball like within the 10-yard line that led to a touchdown. And then they had a 58-yard big play completion that led to a touchdown. So really, if you take away these 4 big plays, their offense didn't really do a whole lot in that game. I think Packers are going to be mindful of Anthony Richardson. He does have scramble ability, like a lot of young quarterbacks have out there. But Jonathan Taylor, he finished with 16 carries, 48 rushing yards. Great running back. I'm not discrediting that at all, but not his best game. Anthony Richardson finished with 212 yards, went 9 for 19, didn't really throw the ball a ton, had a quarterback rating of 101, which actually isn't too bad. I think, we'll get to maybe X factors and whatnot, but this is a Colts team that fell 1 game shy of maybe making the playoffs last year to the Houston Texans. They're an up-and-coming team, but they didn't really wow me. And again, without having overreaction Monday or Tuesday or whenever the heck we're going to bring that segment up, they had their opportunities to win the game against Houston, but I think for the most part, it was Houston's game to lose, and Houston was able to put away the game and control that game and come away with the victory. What's your take? Did you have a chance to watch those highlights? Any thoughts on where the Colts are heading into this game?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of the highlights. I 100% agree with you that those 4 plays make that game look a lot better than it actually was for the Colts. I mean, did you watch that 60-yard touchdown pass?
I did.
Did you watch the replay of that?
Yeah.
I will admit it is very impressive. It was quite the highlight. I mean, he was scrambling. I don't even know if he could see the guy he was throwing.
Well, that's the thing. It was kind of a Hail Mary throw, right? It was impressive.
But it was dead on.
It was on.
I mean, he hit him in stride. It was impressive. But really, that was the highlight of the whole game. I mean, yes, there were some other big plays, but that was really the highlight of the Colts' entire game this week.
Well, and to your point, I want you to finish your thought, but to your point, 60-yard touchdown, 54-yard touchdown, and 58-yard completion, right there were around 180 yards on 3 plays, and he finished with 212 yards passing. So The rest of the game, that offense did not click really all that
Right.
well for the rest of the game. Go ahead.
Well, and it wasn't just Anthony Richardson's play. I mean, he was 9 of 19, not very that's not very good. I think he had a 45 point something completion percentage. So not stellar. But what also stood out to me was Jonathan Taylor's 16 carries for 46 yards. Richardson had more rushing yards than Jonathan Taylor did. That's an issue to me with this Colts team. Honestly, he should be the focus of that offense. And I mean, they gave him the ball a lot, but he wasn't gaining any yards. So that's a problem. And I think the Packers can capitalize on that this week.
Yeah, this is a game that heading into the season, both you and I were confident Packers home opener. Colts are an up and coming team, but a team with Jordan Love that we should easily be able to take care of. If I'm looking at kind of power rankings or strength of schedule or something like this, I'm happy. I'm okay with having to face the Colts. I don't think there's a ton of teams that I'd rather play in a stretch that we might potentially not have Jordan Love. So let's just dive into X factors. Colts are coming off of an 0-1 start to the season. Packers are 0-1. They're fighting for whoever is not going to be 0-2, the dreaded 0-2 to start the regular season. For me, it really just boils down. It's a similar game plan as far as what the Packers had against the Eagles. They can't allow Anthony Richardson to rush because, to your point, he ran for 58 yards on 6 carries. They have to be able to stop the run, and I think the rest of it will fall in. But it's really, we're not going to get a whole lot of production on Malik Willis. I think we're going to get to score predictions. I'm really trying not to jump ahead of myself, but this defense is going to have to step up. It's going to have to be on their best game. I think they're a little bit embarrassed as far as what came from their performance against the Eagles, a very talented Eagles team. But I think the Packers defense has a lot of moxie, and they want to be known as one of the best defenses in the league. And the fact that they weren't able to stop the Eagles with 7 minutes to go in the game, I expect this team coming back at home, knowing that they need to step up to play really well. So I don't know. It's not really a position per se, but it's that entire defense and how they perform. I sound stupid. I'm like fucking John Madden. If the defense plays well and stops the offense, well, in theory, yeah.
If the offense scores points, then they're going to win.
The defense has to step up. And whether it's getting better pass rush on the quarterback and throwing Anthony Richardson off of his mark, whether it's having a creative stunt. I actually took notes of this during the game. Where was it? Keyshawn Nixon was the quarterback spy on one of the plays. That you don't ever see. Like, he didn't rush the quarterback. The slot corner was spying the quarterback. I don't know. That was something that stood out to me. Typically, your spy players are your linebackers, like maybe a Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie. Maybe it's a safety, but very seldomly do I ever see. I wasn't expecting Keyshawn Nixon. So I think they get creative. They continue to kind of watch Richardson throughout the game. I'm rambling. I do that when I drink and I talk about the Packers. So I'm going to digress. The defense has to play well. That's the biggest thing. If the defense steps up, the Packers can find a way to squeak out this victory.
They do. The defense definitely has to step up. That's going to be a key to this one. I have specifically the defensive line. I think it's going to be very important for them to stop the run game with Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson. So my X factor or keys to the game, I have trenches in general. So defensive line has got to stop the run. I think the defense in general, I 100% agree. They got to step up. But Richardson's a young quarterback. He had a big week. 212 yards really isn't a big week. He had a big week last week, but he's young. That big 60-yard touchdown that we were talking about, he kind of blindly wung it out there. I think the Packers defense can take advantage of that and cause some turnovers, maybe score some points off of these turnovers to help the offense out. So I think, yes, defense is a big deal, especially defensive line stopping the run. On the other side of the ball in the trenches, I think the offensive line for the Packers needs to play extremely well, especially in the run game. I think Matt LaFleur and the offense are going to lean heavily on Josh Jacobs and whatever other running backs we have active this week. But I think the running backs, especially Jacobs, are going to be leaned on heavily. They're going to want to pound the rock on the ground and kind of take the pressure off of Malik Willis. We don't want him having to throw the ball, on first and second down because we can't move it on the ground. So run game is going to be very important.
And
those are
the Houston Texans were able to back up the Colts and put them in 3rd and long situations quite frequently last week. Like a lot of those big plays that happened were 3rd and 10, 3rd and 15, 60-yard touchdown. Those plays, if you can eliminate those, that entire score is different between the Houston Texans and the Colts. It passes off a little bit here, or defense is playing a little bit different here. So I think the Colts are not this well-oiled machine that's going to be putting up upper 20 points every week in and out. They still have some figuring out to do. Can the Packers get away, you think, with maybe playing I don't want to say soft, but a little bit more of a prevent defense with them where they avoid, maybe they give up chunk yards, but they don't lead to touchdowns and they can stop them in the red zone? Or do you see them maybe continuing to play their game plan, an aggressive young quarterback, make them frazzled and hit them with everything they got?
I don't think they change their game plan. I think they put lots of pressure on him. I think that's what they do. Because, he's a dual threat. He can run the ball, and obviously he can throw it. He's got quite an arm. I don't know how accurate he is. Well, he's not very accurate. He was 9 of 19. So we know he's not that accurate, but he's got an arm. He can throw the deep ball, and he can run the ball. So you run that prevent defense where you got defensive backs preventing that big play. He's just going to run it for 5 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards, and carve it up that way. So I think the Packers just stick to their normal game plan. They're going to put pressure on him. They're going to throw some wrinkles in there. That's what I want to see. I want to see them continue to put pressure, throw some goofy stuff out there, make things happen, turnovers, turn them into scores. That's what the defense needs to do.
Well, let's head to score predictions. I'll go first, I suppose. I think the defense, as I alluded to here just momentarily, is going to be ready to kind of turn the page on this. If there's any games that you would probably pick the Packers to go out there and lose this season for a Packers podcast, because I don't like picking them to lose ever, but Jordan Love's he's not going to play. If he does, I'll eat my own shirt, whatever the saying is. But this is a game that it could be 50-50, but I do still have confidence in this team, not only against the Colts, but we have Tennessee the week after. And then who knows if Love is still on the mend. We have a Vikings team, which again, check out our overtime episode that will air Thursday nights after Thursday Night Football. So check that out later. But you have a Vikings team that I think surpassed all expectations. If the defense can step up, I love your point about the trenches. That's great insight right there. If the defense can stop and put pressure on Anthony Richardson and stop the run, and they can open up holes for Jacobs and maybe Lloyd, we might actually see him. This team can win. I don't see this being a high scoring game. This is going to be a bend not break sort of game. Like the team that makes the first mistake is probably the one that loses this game. So my score prediction, this is a game I'm still confident enough that the Packers can figure this out. It's the home opener. They don't lose their home openers very often. No Jordan Love. I don't give a shit about that. I'm going to take the Packers. Let's go 13-10 on this one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Real low scoring. Okay.
Yeah. I think if the Packers get in the end zone once, that's a victory, and then we'll see what happens.
Okay.
Maybe 14-10. Maybe it's 14-10. Maybe it's 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I don't know. We don't know.
Yeah. Sure. Well, so I agree with everything you're saying. It's gonna be a kind of a nail biter for Packer fans going into it, not really knowing what things are gonna look like. Is it gonna be really bad without Jordan Love? Is it gonna be, okay because of the team that we're playing? Ultimately, I have the Packers winning as well. I do have a little bit more scoring in this one. As I mentioned, when we were talking about our X factors, that defense, I think, can cause some turnovers and hopefully turn those turnovers into some points. Pick six, scoop and score. I'd love to see some of that to help the Malik Willis and the offense out. I have the Packers winning 23-21.
Woo.
So I have a tight game, but Packers squeak one out. I don't know how many times you just said squeak one out, so that's what we're going to do.
For what it's worth, your score prediction in week 1 was damn near close, right? So your original prediction was Philadelphia. I'm going to give you credit for that one because I talked a bunch of bullshit last week, made you change your mind. I don't think you're happy with yourself. I think your gut says I should have stuck with my original prediction because you originally had Eagles winning 31-28. It ended up being 34-29. That's a really damn close prediction. You think the Packers can put up more than 20 points because they failed to do that numerous times last year with a struggling Jordan Love. You think Malik Willis is capable of putting up over 20 points? Are you saying there's going to be defensive touchdowns in this game?
I believe there will be defensive scoring.
I hope so. Those are fun.
I think this defense they are itching to make up for mistakes that were made last week, show the rest of the league that they are a top defense in the league again. The showing that they put out last week, I don't think was bad, but it still turned into a loss. So I think they're hungry and they're gonna be going for that ball, especially with Jordan Love out there. The defense is gonna know, okay, our starting quarterback is not gonna be on the field. We got to do something to help this offense out. So I can definitely see some defensive scoring. And you asked if I think that Malik Willis can put up multiple touchdowns. I think Josh Jacobs can put up multiple touchdowns, is what I think. And, we're not really talking much about Malik Willis's ability to run the ball as well. I think the Packers rushing game is going to be the highlight of the offense. Josh Jacobs, whatever other running backs are out there, whether it's Wilson or Lloyd or anybody else that they hand the ball off to, Jaden Reed running the ball.
Waterboy is the other.
Right. But I think Malik Willis is going to run the ball a lot too. Hasn't had a lot of time with the team. Obviously, he's working hard to learn the playbook, but his rushing ability is going to be highly beneficial in this type of situation. He's learning the playbook, and he's not a big, he's not going to extend plays. He's not going to make magic happen, but go through his progressions. If nothing's there, I feel like Matt LaFleur is going to tell him, okay, if you don't see your options there, tuck it and run, because he has the ability to do that. He's a big guy. He's a big quarterback. So I see him having probably quite a few rushing yards as well. Maybe even a rushing touchdown. So
can I go back and make an X Factor individual prediction? Because you just got me thinking right there. The X Factor in this game is Matt LaFleur. This is a Matt LaFleur game, right? This is
100%.
This is 100% game plan, scheme, creativity, play calling, whatever you want to say. Like trying to figure out how you can make this engine fire up and perform and turn without your star quarterback in there. And Matt LaFleur arguably could have been coach of the year 2 years ago, 3 years ago. He's got some, he knows what he's doing. All right. So if Matt LaFleur can dial up a offensive game plan for this, Jordan Loveless Packers offense, that could definitely be your X factor right there.
You think we see some wildcat?
Oh, absolutely. I think we see all sorts of crazy. I think it's going to be
Josh. Who lines up in the quarterback position in the wildcat? Josh Jacobs, Jaden Reed. Yeah. That'd be fun.
That could be
Wildcat does not work in the NFL though.
No, it doesn't.
There's teams that have tried it. It's kind of that trick play, that one-off play. They don't like run that as their offense, but I've never seen it work in the NFL.
Well, let's kick it over to overtime because let's just talk about, because I want to go into other games. So
let's go.
Let's kick it over to overtime. Thanks for watching episode week 2 highlights. Home Sweet Home, I believe, is what we're titling it. Go Pack, go. Until next time. Well, we'll see you at overtime, but until next time, we'll see you on the internet. Thanks for watching.